This is 8 Minute Climate Fix, a podcast helping you understand the energy and climate challenge in just a few minutes. I'm your host, Paul Schuster. What the heck is going on in climate policy? It's not a surprise that the current Trump administration has rolled back environmental policies at the federal level, but I think most of us just assumed a doubling down by states, especially deep blue states such as Massachusetts, California, or New York. But in the last few months, all three of those states have dialed back climate action in the name of energy affordability. So, what's going on? Today, I'll look at these three states in particular and try to make sense of the current political appetite for ongoing climate aspirations. 8 minutes. It's how long it takes the sun's rays to hit Earth, or about how long it takes Lionel Messi to score another 4 goals. I can't get enough of this year's World Cup, and maybe the last time we'll see the GOAT on this stage. Let's get it on. New York has long led the way on its state-level climate commitments. Its landmark Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA, was enacted in 2019 and required an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. A 40% reduction was mandated by 2030. The bill was big, bold. The Climate Act required utilities to switch to renewable power, and it directed savings back into disadvantaged communities to help bring them along on this energy transition. But in May of this year, the New York Assembly and Governor Hochul did something extraordinary. They hammered out an annual budget that significantly altered the Climate Act, dropping the 2030 mandate, delaying regulations, modulating compliance needs if, quote, feasible and cost-effective. Environmental advocates were furious at what was perceived as a rollback of progressive climate legislation, but Governor Hochul's office justified the actions by pointing to a NYSERDA memo that suggested that costs could rise for certain households by as much as $4,000 per year if the CLCPA remained in its former state. Climate meet cost. Massachusetts went through a similar round of debates, with House Bill 5151 passing in February. That bill proposes cutting the Mass Save program by $1 billion, arguing that residential homeowners need utility bill relief after suffering through price shocks brought on by the Ukraine and Iran wars. Mass Save is the huge energy efficiency program in Massachusetts, so these cuts would have a big impact on helping homeowners and small businesses shift to cleaner, more efficient appliances, heat pumps, lighting, and other things. And then there's California, which seemed to take a step forward on their climate commitments by extending their Cap and Invest program into 2045. But then the details needed to be figured out. And the California Air Resources Board, CARB, ended up providing oil refineries in the state with billions in free air permits, essentially cutting the climate fund in half. The reasoning as to why? Yep, energy affordability. Something that Governor Newsom declared as a, quote, reasonable compromise, while environmental advocates screamed that the oil permits hollowed out the intent of the law in the first place. So, what does this all mean? Are we in a period of governments just pulling back on climate commitments altogether? Have the dual price shocks of global wars and surging data center demand caught up with us? Have we traded climate action for near-term affordability? The answer is, as you've probably guessed, nuanced. For the most part, these deep blue states have firmly stated that they are not giving up on their climate commitments, just reshaping how those commitments are going to happen. And frankly, politicians are searching for visible ways that they can tell their constituents that they hear their concerns on rising electricity bills and are doing something about it. In Massachusetts, that gutting of the Mass Save program is almost entirely driven by those optics. The reality is that the program returns $2 for every $1 spent, which is a solid, if unspectacular, return on investment. It's not losing money, but it does show up on every single utility bill that goes out to homeowners. And by removing that charge, politicians can point to a discrete action addressing affordability. Will it matter? Probably not. And that's one of the reasons why the bill is hung up in the state Senate for the summer as they debate whether this is performative or material. New York was similar. The NYSERDA report indicating that costs were going to rise for certain households by $4,000, that was real, tangible, and scary. But it's not the only entity that has done analysis on the CLCPA. The Environmental Defense Fund estimated that the bill would actually result in $6.9 billion in savings for the state. So who's right? Does it matter? The pain of energy costs is real, and so the legislature passed the revised budget in short order. Governor Hochul, for her part, argues that this is not a rollback of climate pledges. The state is holding to its longer-term 2050 commitment. It's holding power utilities accountable for transitioning to more renewable energy. Hochul simply frames this as a pragmatic reset to ensure that this transition can be done without stressing the New York consumer, which is how Governor Newsom framed it in California as well. A pragmatic compromise to balance affordability with climate goals. The challenge for these governors, though, is that they're trying to thread a needle, giving real affordability relief while not disrupting the voting bloc that continues to advocate for real climate progress. For New York, none of the changes in the current budget are going to result in lower costs for consumers. That was all based on what could happen if certain targets are left untouched. It was forward-looking, not addressing costs as they sit right now. The real drivers behind increasing electricity prices aren't climate policies. It's aging power infrastructure, increased load growth, extreme weather events, geopolitical conflicts, an arcane regulatory structure that is incentivizing the wrong investments. Climate policy really isn't the driver, but the mass save line item or the New York NYSERDA cost estimates or $6 per gallon gasoline in California, these are very visible costs that politicians are seeing as an opportunity. It remains to be seen as to whether these initial rollbacks will cascade into other policies or states, or whether the climate community will raise up voices from the left that will challenge these politicians to find, quote, pragmatic compromises that actually do balance affordability with climate action. I'm Paul Schuster, and this has been your 8 Minutes.